Well, it is the biggest issue we are not talking about this election. Now there's a new campaign to put climate change back on the agenda.
The cost of living. As we barrel towards the federal election, for 75% of Aussies, it's the number one issue.
I guess on top of everyone's minds, the cost of living.
It's one of the hardest things going these days at the moment.
The fact that every time you go to the supermarket, like I'm going to at the moment, it costs 30% more than it did the week before.
As grocery bills, rent, energy prices continue to soar, the number of voters prioritising climate change as a top issue is slumping. Just 25% say it's a concern for them.
They're more worried about day-to-day things.
Does not sway my vote.
Climate Council launching a campaign to put the climate back on the election agenda.
Vote like our lives depend on it, because they do.
It comes after grim news today from the UN's World Meteorological Organisation. 2024 confirmed as the hottest year on record, the first year to be more than 1.5 degrees above the pre-industrial era, with 151 unprecedented extreme events globally. Thousands of Aussies still mopping up in the wake of Cyclone Alfred.
Is global warming making natural disasters worse?
The science tells us they would be more frequent and they'd be more intense.
Unfortunately, the Labor Party seems to be talking big on renewables, but as we see when we look over their record, they've been approving coal mine extensions.
In the 2022 federal election, climate change was a main driver behind the teal wave that saw voters ditch the Liberal Party for independence. This time round, the opposition have gone nuclear.
Nuclear is 44% cheaper than the government's renewables only policy.
The nuclear policy is just a farce. The worst thing about it, though, is the Labor Party quite likes talking about nuclear as well. Both sides can just argue about something that isn't real instead of actually focusing on real action.
I worry for my kids. If governments don't make the right decisions now, I don't know what sort of future they're going to have, if any future.
But while both sides of politics largely ignore climate change in favour of hip pocket issues, climate change itself is pushing up the cost of living.
We're seeing it so very directly with insurance premiums. We know that there's going to be an impact from the floods in southeast Queensland.
So with Aussies struggling to make ends meet, will the Climate Council's campaign cut through with voters and pollies?
I think, more worried about put food on the table than if we're going to have another cyclone sometime in the future.
Well, former New South Wales Fire Commissioner and current member of the Climate Council, Greg Mullins, joins us. Greg, it seems both sides of politics are avoiding climate change this election. Why do you think that is?
Look, the people I speak to have had a bit of a gut full of politicians avoiding the big issues. And on the one hand, we've got a coalition that's got a very bad track record on climate action. They had a decade of inaction. They dismantled our eyes and ears in the CSIRO. Very bad track record in emergency management and the Black Summer bushfires. Labor's actually got a good story to tell about the progress that's been made in just 3 years. But we really need to think about what do we want for our future. And we need to talk about this because we're getting more natural disasters, they're getting more intense, they're hurting more people. So it really must be an issue.
But aren't they just reading the electorate? I mean, it's not where the electorate's head is. And even when climate change was a big political issue, the polling data was really clear. People cared about climate change, they didn't want to pay for it. And now you've got a cost of living crisis where people are trying to put food on the table. I mean, how do you make people care about climate change in that climate?
Well, actually, the UN Climate Voice survey found that the majority of Australians are worried about climate change. They want their politicians to take action. So you can rub your tummy and pat your head at the same time. So people can be worried about more than just the cost of living. But if we unpack cost of living, insurance premiums have gone up 75% in the last 10 years because of more natural disasters. And that's not just here, it's worldwide. Los Angeles, Maui, Spain, the floods. So that's driving up insurance costs. And we've made progress on renewables. So old, unreliable coal plants and gas plants are breaking down, driving up costs. But up to 40% of our electricity now is from renewables, and it's far cheaper. The Australian Energy Market Operator and CSIRO have said nuclear's a joke and it will be too late, and we can drive down costs now. So we need to think about the future, what our kids and our grandkids are going to inherit, as well as the here and now.
Greg, are people really struggling because it all feels a bit hopeless? Like there's no leadership worldwide in this regard, so it's all a bit too much to think about?
Oh, Liz, most certainly I know, speaking to people as a firefighter, unlike someone else, I've held a hose and continue to hold a hose, but people who are being impacted by fires, by Tropical Cyclone Alfred, by the 2022 floods, Black Summer bushfires, they're terrified because they've seen it up front and close. Other people are terrified. And I suppose they start to switch off, but we need to focus on the progress that's been made. We've done so much with renewables. We've got legislation in place now setting targets. And we've got a contrast between a party that wants to dismantle all that, go back to doing nothing, and a party that's actually prepared to have a go. But then we have the wild card. We have the Teals and the Greens, and that sent a big message to the big parties. Climate is real and people do care.
All right, Greg, we appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you.